Hello everybody, welcome back. So today I decided to paint a shallow creek, and I did a brief, really quick sketch. However, I'm not going to use that sketch. So I'm using a little bit of yellow ochre. It's tainted. As you can see, it's not pure yellow ochre. And that's pretty much going to be the creek here. And I was thinking about this, we were in a drought for a couple months, and most of the creeks were down. The rivers were down. And I've always been fascinated with water. So I'm coming across here with, this is a little bit of yellow ochre with a little bit of gamboge and just a touch of dark blue for the sky. So I basically wanted to get everything out of the way really quick, okay? The subject matter here is the creek. So I put a little bit of crimson red light in the sky. And I just really enjoy painting these things, different subject matters. A little bit of dark blue here. And now I'm using this brush here. It's a Ron Ranson Hake brush. And notice how I'm getting textures just by tapping it, moving it up, down, sideways. After putting in some of that dark blue. And that's to give it a more natural look, if you will. And then everything is very wet here. So even though the creek is the subject here, the focal point, you need a little bit of shade, right? You got your light and your shade. So I put in some more of the dark blue here. And on top of it, I put in some lemon yellow. And I do this only to create greens. You can use any color you'd like to. You can make it an autumn tree. You can use yellow ochre on top of the blue. You can use any kind of green you want or whatever color. It's just basically to set something there for shade. So here I am coming along the bank here. Some burnt umber. And I'm kind of testing the waters out here. I'll throw some of that burnt umber into the tree too. Actually, it's a collage of trees. Maybe like a little grove, if you will. This is not from any kind of reference photo, just an idea. So come along and make sure that the horizon line is fairly straight. Even though it's not 1/3 up or 2/3 down, 1/3 down. Now I'm putting in a little bit of blue here, the same dark blue. You can use any blue you want. I like to use the darker blues. And with some lemon yellow, I'm coming over this way. Mainly because I want to give, I'm, of course, creating the scene, but I wanted to create kind of a hill. Almost like if it, we're out in the flat land. So I didn't care for the burnt umber. It was a little bit too much reddish in it. So I come along and I put in a little bit of raw umber in there to give it more of an earth feel. There's no drying time in this. It's wet on wet and fast and loose. I like how the clouds are kind of coming together. So one way I use to put rocks in, of course, is with the little bitty cut up card. That's an easy way of doing it. On the bank, just to kind of give it some texture, give it some character. And in the meantime, I like this little creek here because the water is it's very watered down, right? And when it's very watered down, that allows you to do more things. And, that's why a lot of people do wash after wash, right? So I put just a touch of the dark blue in here over this kind of tainted yellow ochre. And, what I'm looking for here is basically, the shade. I'm looking for shade. I want this to look shallow. And, the saying is, your water is always darker than your sky, right? However, in this painting, because it is a shallow creek, I didn't want it to be darker than the sky. So with just a paper napkin, I'm just barely touching it, trying to, almost if you will, getting texture as well as pat drying it, as well as creating a movement in the paint. So this is the basic scene here, right? It's very quick. This was done very quick. Of course, the tree is not the focal point. It's there mainly to give, so I can have a little bit of shade in this painting here. Okay, so I come back here and I'm just going to kind of fool around. This is violet, okay, straight out of the tube, violet. I didn't mix this. When I was painting this, I had wetted my paints that were in my portable palette to reactivate them. However, I didn't wet them enough, so by the time I started painting, they were all dry, which is kind of frustrating sometimes. So I'm putting a little bit more yellow ochre in here, over in between those violet areas. And just kind of, skipping back and forth randomly. And because this was fast and loose and it was spontaneous, this is how I like to paint. I like to experiment with things. So you can call this an experiment. And you see it live. So now I'm gonna pat dry all of these little spots here, right? And I'm like, okay, what can I do here? And I'm thinking off the top of my head, what can I do here? Okay, so there's a little bit of crimson, right? And I'm like, okay, let's put in a little bit of crimson. Basically what I'm doing is I'm looking for different earth tones to kind of put in the center of this creek, to give it, when you're looking at a shallow creek, you're seeing earth, but it's underwater. So it's, it's translucent, right? So instead of letting everything dry on its own, I used the paper napkin to pat dry everything. Okay. It has its pros and cons of doing that. If you look at the grass there, you'll see where there's a little bit of shade there, and toward the top, there's more of the sun coming through on the top of that grass. So now I'm using, it's a little bit of burnt umber with a touch of yellow ochre, and and it's wet, and I'm barely touching the top of this creek. So I left in some of the white areas, thinking, okay, well, maybe they could be rocks or something. And then I went ahead and I was like, okay, maybe I can go ahead and lift some areas out with the paintbrush. And then I was like, I don't know. Like I said, I was experimenting with this and having a blast. That's why it's good to paint all the time. I paint as much as I can. And I use my sketchbook to do my paintings every morning just about. Whether it comes out good or not, or if I'm happy or not, that's not the whole point. The whole point is you always learn something. So, and I'm not, it doesn't bother me at all to share these videos of myself painting and experimenting. My whole idea is to give you ideas and to see the progress I've made, and they go back and forth. So I'm putting in some more umber here, and actually I start mixing up a little bit of the gray. So what is the gray? Well, the gray is basically what I have on my palette mixed together. So there's different shades of that kind of gray, right? So here I take the fan brush and I put a little bit of umber and just different colors from the gray, leaning toward the umber, the burnt umber and raw umber. And I'm just gonna put in some tree trunks here, just because there's a clutter of trees there, like a grove, or the creek's turning a bend. So again, the tree is not the focal point. It's a good way of putting a subject in there when you really want shade and you don't have anything. So now I'm coming across with some darker blue, which is almost like a Payne's gray at this point. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to make my marks here and there, and we're going to come across into this little creek, and we're going to give some shade. The shade's going to go here and there. And we'll just do it like this. I'm creating some textures in this little creek now. And you'll see how I do, the flow of the water and the way that, not only the flow of the water, but also at the same time, the way the shadows come from the dark on both sides of this little creek. So using a card here just to get a little texture, a little more tree branches, twigs. And always remember, the underpainting, whenever you're scraping rocks or whatever, you're going to get whatever you're scraping, you're going to get that undertone from the original color that's over what you're scraping. So in this case, it's more of a greenish, bluish. On the other side, it's more the burnt umber, raw umber. You always get that when you're doing this. So just remember that. I hope that you're having a wonderful time watching this. I hope that maybe you learn something from this or get an idea. And maybe, this is just from the top of my head and I'm having fun. Please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. I really appreciate it. And I want to wish you a wonderful day, evening, morning, and night, wherever you are. Sincerely yours, John.